Hi, this is a good car review channel, so, you know. Although having said that, if you're new to this channel, this probably isn't going to be your best introduction to us. Because this here is the latest in a seemingly ceaseless string of crossovers shooting out of the big vag. I hope. There is of course a very real chance that Volkswagen has come out with another crossover between now and the time it's taken me to edit this together. Anyway, this is so humour-sappingly efficient that I honestly have no idea how I'm going to keep you interested for the next 8 minutes or so. Not the first time I've said that, let me tell you. See? See what I've been reduced to? I wonder how Volkswagen made this interesting. Yeah, okay, of course, celebrity. What's she called again? Carly Del Rey or something. And there's a drummer of Lady One on the street. Wait, what? Is that her? There she is again. And now she's running. Don't know how that's happened. Now she's back in the car. And there she is again. That's her. And that's... I see what's happening. There's a hashtag. She's more than one thing. And this is a crossover. Also more than one thing. See? It's a runabout and also it's a... Yep, it's a runabout. It's a slightly taller runabout, and it certainly hasn't crossed over into being anything like an SUV. You can't get one with four-wheel drive for a start, so that's that. And it's not a sports car or a driver's car, if you like, of any sort either. I mean, you only need to look at this to see that it's not going to be any good at doing anything remotely athletic.
Yeah, it was that boy. He took the prize, man. Who's he? Listen, who went with the prize? It was me, white.
So it's little and it's a bit tubby, so it's rubbish, right?
Couple of times. Oh, big shot. Beautiful punch.
No.
Lewis catches Joshua. He's done. Wow.
Not at all.
Wow, he's waiting it off. Wow. Andy Ruiz Jr.
This is flipping good. Now, it's boring as flip, yes, but I'm afraid to say that if you're from the camp that hates how homogeneously excellent all of the VWG products have become, then switch off now because we're about to go all waxy lyrical. Starting with the way it drives. Now, of course, it's not really a disarming dynamic demolition job of Andy Ruiz Jr. proportions, but it is good fun to drive. And that's not to do with the way it goes around corners, which is probably obvious, but it's the way it does everything else. It's refined and it's comfortable both in terms of the driving position and the ride quality. And it's tall and has a lot of glass, so it has excellent visibility. And it's very maneuverable for that reason. And also because it's about the size of Dennis Wise.
He has noticed that Dennis Wise is a very small man.
And yet inside, proportionally, it's just about a family car. Just. Yep, it does that thing. I'm talking about that thing where you drive it and it feels like you're commanding a teacup, but in reality it'll actually swallow as much tea as your dad's holiday thermos. I'm exaggerating again. Still, whatever it is, crossover or otherwise, this is one very thoughtfully approached vehicle. It feels like a big car behind the wheel because it has a big car driving position and loads of space above your bonds and loads of seat and wheel adjustments, so it doesn't matter what size you are, and it's highly likely that you're going to be staring at infotainment and instrumentation that just a couple of years ago wouldn't have looked out of place in an executive car. So all cars get Volkswagen's class-leadingly intuitive 8-inch touchscreen setup, and if you buy anything other than the base model, then for a very reasonable few hundred quid, or free if you buy a top spec car, you can have a digital instrument display, a thing that Audi calls virtual cockpit, because that makes Audi drivers feel special, but it's basically exactly the same thing. Now, not only does this provide you with an array of information in high definition and in customizable fashion, but it generally just makes the whole experience feel very not small car. Yep, that's pretty much what it feels like in here, surprisingly so on the motorway, albeit it's not perfect there, which is largely to do with it being tall and slab-sided. I like to think of it as a sort of beans on toast experience. You'll really enjoy it, but ultimately, wind will be your enemy. And to think that at the start of this review, I warned you that it wouldn't be a comedy riot. But going further, as much as I alluded before to this being a bit soppy to drive, it is in fact a lot more fun than you think it's going to be. In my opinion, Volkswagen has set this thing up right in the sweet spot between like judder-free comfort and good body control. What I mean by that is that it does have good body control, as in it doesn't roll around too much when you turn this thing, but it's also not so firm that it judders a lot. A lot of these type of cars, especially the more comfortable ones, are a leaning tower of mess whenever you turn a corner. Drive one of the Citroen ones for a good example of that. Now, of course, how this thing handles on a B road is of exactly zero consequence to anybody that's going to buy one. I know that's a stereotype, but it's almost certainly true. But what the relative lack of roll means in real life is that it's more comfortable because when you are turning a corner, which you will of course have to at some point, it's not throwing your shit around everywhere. And so, refined, comfy, decent to drive, where is the Achilles heel? Because it's not practicality either. The T-Cross does a cracking job there too. The boot is mega, family hatchback sized by volume, but also thoughtful as standard. Like lift the floor and it's
so deep.
Now obviously this setup assumes that you don't stick a spare wheel in there, but if you don't, then the space is like Buffalo Bill's spare bedroom.
Wish me love or wishing well.
Also, look at these clips that hold the floor up, leaving you with two hands to load an especially bulky item, whatever that may be.
Wish me love or wishing well.
Okay, this has gone quite dark now. Let's reset.
Everyone is having fun.
Practicality then. Aside from the size and the thoughtfulness of the boot, you can also slide the rear bench forward if you want more boot space. Although that of course comes at the expense of rear leg space. Basically all of it if you've got somebody as tall as me driving the car. Having said that, with a bench back, there is a lot of leg space in this car, and certainly a lot for a car that is so small of footprint. Oh yes, and a not inconsequential amount of oddman space in the cabin. So what is actually wrong with this car, I hear you ask, because it can't be nothing. And of course it's not nothing. Firstly, there's the price. So while it's not catastrophically expensive, the options list is vast and it is slightly on the higher side of average when compared to these arbitrarily chosen other small crossovers. Apart from the Vauxhall Mach-R X, which is bafflingly expensive and which I wouldn't recommend that you buy even if it was half the price, or indeed the last car model on Earth. And even then, right, the cost is offset by a base model that gives you pretty much everything that you need as standard. And it uses engines from the lower end of the Volkswagen Group pecking order, which might sound depressing, but it just means that they're all pretty efficient. Just a couple, a lovely 3-cylinder petrol in 2 states of tune and a 1.6 TDI. And they're both available with a manual and a twin clutch auto. Classic Volkswagen stuff. You know the drill, this is a Volkswagen Group small car, and so no surprise. As usual, the petrols I want to go for. Nothing magical, but it sounds decent, it feels pokey enough, and you'll probably return economy in the mid to high 40s. And as you can tell from my tone, I'm struggling to conjure up much enthusiasm for yet another small capacity Volkswagen Group engine. Whatever engine you choose, the T-Cross is quite cheap to insure. And beyond that, you're probably going to get strong residuals which will negate the relatively high list price anyway. And so, again, what is actually wrong with this car? Of course there are things that some people won't like about this car. That's the nature of everybody being different. But the only problem I really have with it is that I find the interior bit drab. Screens aside, it's all a bit grey and it's all a bit VW by numbers. Like they've just grabbed a handful of the small car switchgear bits and thrown it together one lunchtime. And what's a bit weird about all this is that the slightly bigger Volkswagen crossover, the T-Roc, does give you an array of brightly coloured trims to choose from that really like lift the interior. You don't really get that here. And that's odd because you think it would be the other way around. You think that the smallest and most youthy crossover in the lineup would be the one with all the wacky colours and stuff. That aside, I really genuinely like this, which is a bit depressing to be honest. For me, this has overtaken the Seat Arona as the small crossover that I'd choose if somebody held me over a barrel and said, you must have a small crossover. It's funny, in a sector that I find the most depressingly boring of all the car sectors, the most ostensibly boring and efficient one has come along and become the one that I most enjoyed and would most likely recommend. I can't quite get my head around that. I suppose it shows that just being really good at the one thing that you're supposed to do is good enough. In this case, just being a runaround.
My ass!
Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Please hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. I know I say that all the time, but it really makes a big difference to us. Have a look at our other stuff. If you like this, you will like that. And I'll see you soon. Bye!